It's been 7 weeks to the day since I recorded my last review. 8 weeks by the time this video actually comes out. Long enough for the latest season to wrap up and facial hair to start growing back. And still no classic Doctor Who releases in New Zealand. Boy, how time flies. Anyway, last time I revealed that Destiny of the Daleks was the only Season 17 serial that I had actually seen before, and I teased that I wasn't really looking forward to reviewing this one. Well, truth is, I technically have attempted to watch this one before, way back in 2009, but much like Invasion of the Dinosaurs, or the Android Invasion, a lot of invasions, I couldn't get past the first episode. For me, back then, episode 1 was just too boring, so I never bothered to go back to it. Meaning I am very curious to see how I feel about it today. Fast forward to last week and I see comments under my previous review saying that this is one of their all-time favourites and they absolutely adore it. And then somebody else saying that they hate this one with a burning passion. Several of you have pointed out that this is considered to be one of the favourites. Wait. Really? This is a favourite? That's the first I've heard about it. Let me consult the old Ultimate Doctor Who Rankings video on Josh Nair's YouTube channel. And after all, it can't be that high on the list. Number 3? This is considered the 3rd best classic Doctor Who serial? You know what? Who cares? I couldn't give a toss about popular opinion, and most of the time I don't even know what the general consensus is when it comes to old school Who. Like what you like, dislike what you dislike. I'm just here to provide my thoughts and opinions as a first-time viewer. Okay, so what originally put me off back in 2009 was the seemingly excessive wandering aimlessly around the streets of Paris. Like, extended scenes with cringy music while the 4th Doctor and Romana just, walking around, not doing much in particular. For what felt like an eternity. I was far too young and naive back then to truly appreciate the significance of what it meant for the show to actually do this. So even in the years that followed 09, whenever I thought back to that first episode, I had to assume that it would have been a big deal at the time to see the show being actually filmed in France. Now that I'm 28 and I have the context of the entire show up until this point, I 1000% understand how significant this is. The entire story is set in Paris, for the most part, and the majority of it is actually filmed there, on location, in Paris. Heck, even the modern series had to settle for a brick wall at some random kid's soccer field as a stand-in for New York City. And yes, I said soccer because New York, America. Heading into this, the only 2 images that I've had burned into the back of my mind since my first attempt at watching it was 1, the Doctor and Romana, strolling through Paris having a merry old time, and 2, a wall of numerous Mona Lisa paintings. Which is actually from episode 2, so maybe I did make it past the first episode back then, but it was just so forgettable that I got my wires crossed. Whatever, none of that matters today. I just wanted to share that overly long backstory to explain why I was so hesitant to get around to viewing this one. 7 weeks after my last review. Well, so, City of Death. 2nd serial of season 17. 1979. Paris. France. Yeah, it's pretty good. Thanks for watching. See you next week. I'm kidding, of course, I have a lot more to say about it. For starters, there's nowhere near as much aimlessly wandering around as I seem to remembered. Don't get me wrong, there's still far too much of it, and it really drags. But at least it's counterbalanced with an actual plot. A plot which sees the T.A.R.D.I.S randomizer bring the duo to Paris, 1979, on a vacation of sorts to hopefully see Ladybug and Cat Noir fighting the bad guys. But oh no, the wibbly-wobbly timey-wimey stuff is going on, and to think all they wanted was a little holiday after dealing with the Daleks. Oh, and K9's still benched. Of course, you got a bad guy who's absolutely hamming it up in the role, a nerdy scientist with a conscience, a loyal to a fault butler slash hitman, and a trophy wife who's also there. But plot twist, the bad guy is actually an alien! Ah, what a shock! Who could have possibly seen that coming? There's obviously a lot more to that reveal, but given the fact that this is supposedly the third most popular serial of the classic era, I'm gonna assume you already know that. If not, go watch it for yourself. The bad guy's sinister plot is pretty clever from a writing perspective. If you start to think about the finer details a bit too much, it just becomes, a little silly. Like, bro goes through all this effort to acquire long-lost treasure and arts, just to sell them on the black market in order to fund this scientist's project down in his basement. Alright, buddy, couldn't just, go rob a bank or something? No, you gotta make it complicated. Another quick tangent here. I somehow had it in my mind that the bad guy's plan was to steal the genuine Mona Lisa in 1979 in order to sell it on the black market, then travel back in time to steal it again before he stole it in the future, thus creating a paradox. So he would travel further and further back in time, stealing it over and over again, somehow making it so that each one he stole didn't vanish, so he had accumulated the same item numerous times, and it was up to the Doctor to stop him, because stealing the same item over and over again, creating a paradox, was breaking the timeline. I have no idea where I got that from, because that is far from what we see in City of Death. And honestly, my wild imagination misremembering is far more exciting than what he actually does. Just somehow getting Leonardo da Vinci to paint 7 somehow identical portraits of the Mona Lisa, then spending hundreds of years reacquiring them just to sell them in the future to fund his research. Okay, time to stop overthinking a 70s sci-fi serial. It works in the moment while you're watching it, and I guess that's what counts. And although it might seem like I'm nitpicking a lot of superfluous details, it's mostly because I'm struggling to think of anything majorly good or bad about it. Yep, as I expected, it's good. Nothing amazing, but, it wasn't bad or boring. While the first half was a bit 50-50, what with the whole, aimless wandering scenes, I gotta admit, that episode 2 cliffhanger got me good. It was a reveal that had me intrigued, and was the first time while watching this serial that I was actually like, okay, this has potential. But don't get me started on the episode 1 cliffhanger. It's so delightfully cheesy and pointless. Like, why did you do that? There was no reason to dramatically reveal yourself in an empty room, complete with a quick zoom turn to camera, only to return to normal in the very next scene. Oh, I love this show sometimes. More positives. The writing has a real bite to the dialogue, with the characters' wits being on full display. The novelty of seeing these actors walking around real-world Paris, while not particularly exciting to me, is nevertheless cool to see, and to think about how far the show has come from cramped indoor studio sets with polystyrene monsters to filming overseas. They even get a bit creative with the camera shots. I mean, sure, it's basic by today's standards, but hey, credit where it's due, someone behind the camera made an effort. Hey, stop looking directly at the camera. And it has to be said, this alien landscape set is beautiful. Just look at the detail. Quite reminiscent of Ridley Scott's Prometheus. Also, I didn't know the Doctor was a fan of one of the best video games ever made.
Almost like a crack in time. A crack in time.
Plus, shout out to the return of one of my favourite lines of Doctor Who dialogue, reverse the polarity! You can't go wrong by reversing the polarity every once in a while. Romana actually has a bit more to do here. Her agency in the story is appreciated, and it's probably the most her character has ever had to do, outside of maybe the androids of Tara. Coincidentally, still my least viewed review out of 105 serials. Oh, hi, John Cleese. Although, big old continuity breaking plotline. In City of Death, Romana claims that she's 125. But in her introductory serial, The Rebos Operation, she says she's in her 170s. What gives, Romana? Where's the consistency? Did you de-age while regenerating? Or is it that this incarnation is 125, which means you've been faffing about with the Doctor for over a century in between the events of Destiny of the Daleks and now? Or more likely, who cares? Heck, at this point, even I have given up caring about strict continuity. Do you think the evil space doggo popped out a Susan in Paris too? Real quick before I forget, this detective character is really cool. Well, at least I found him to be quite amusing, especially the way he comedically clashes with the Doctor's personality. He's also responsible for one of my new favourite out-of-context clips.
History cannot change. It cannot. I will change it.
Oh, I love that. All that build-up just to be sucker punched. No. Oh, and what happens immediately afterwards, how the character meets his ultimate end, is so funny. It's ironic. It's like poetry getting taken out by your most loyal lackey because he didn't recognize you. No, wait, it's me! It almost makes me forgive the immediate cut to, and then that thing that happened off screen saved the day and solved all our problems. The alien costume is, well, he looks like a dish scourer. Like a sponge you'd find at the bottom of the ocean. Actually, now that I look closer, it's quite reminiscent of the original design of the aliens from the Faceless Ones. Sorry, what was I talking about? Oh, right, the alien. Yeah, it's alright. Certainly an iconic design. And hey, it makes the DVD cover memorable. Hey kids! City of Death! Rated G for general audiences! Why is it called City of Death? Moving on, they use the exact same voice filter for the City of Death alien that they used for the Shadow, at least in his telepathic skull state, from the Armageddon Factor. The one I said sounded like Megatron from 2 whole serials ago? Which is weird. Why wouldn't you differentiate it a bit, bringing back the same sounding voice 2 weeks later? Oh, I suppose, no, episodes airing weeks, so, you know what I mean. While I was thinking it over, I reckon that the whole single person scattered across all of time aspect could be really fascinating if it was explored a little more in depth. Perhaps a modern story could do something with that idea. But as it stands, I think that the simple visual of seeing the same person, but with different variations of them throughout history, was quite effective. I just realised that this isn't going to make any sense if you haven't seen the story I'm talking about. Which, if you're watching this, and you haven't seen City of Death, thank you very much for supporting me despite not having seen it. You are the best. So, should you watch it? If you're in the mood for a slower start and can appreciate the gravity of the whole filming in France thing, yeah, sure. I won't recommend it as a greatest hits, must watch now kind of thing. But yeah, I'll easily add it to the list of solid stories. No idea why it's number 3 on the rankings though. What is that about? Thank you very much for watching. After the wildly differing opinions I read in the comments of last week's review about this serial, I am very curious to see what you all have to say about it today. Next week is a creature from the pit.